solemn duty as part of that commitment to a free society, as we are not just electing a party leader, but a Prime Minister. The country we love would expect us to ensure that this process is rigorous, because we need a Prime Minister who will deliver Brexit and who will beat our political opponents. Now, those of us who knock on doors week in and week out know only too well that our political opponents are far less committed to that free society than we are. Supported by the National Convention officers, I made the case before the party board that the leadership campaign had to reach every part of our United Kingdom, and that all members should have access to at least one hustings. There was no disagreement on this, and at this point I'd like to therefore thank the party chairman, the Right Honourable Brandon Lewis MP, for his support. I'd also like to thank him more generally for his support for the voluntary party. You will have noticed that we've got more resources at our disposal than we've had for many years, and that is in large part down to him. And I'd also like to finally thank the logistics team at CCHQ led by Tom Skinner and the conference team led by David Comerford, who have done an unbelievable job in very difficult circumstances. To read it, and please engage with it. It is very simple. Where we have campaign managers, we are doing better than in areas where we do not. But this is a hugely expensive undertaking, and we are rather reliant on others to help us do it at the moment. So please can we be true Conservatives and help ourselves on this one. Ladies and gentlemen, that's it from me. Thank you very much indeed, Hannah. Enjoy your evening, and I hope your questions are spot on. Thank you.
Andrew, thanks very much. Now, I don't need to remind you how crucial this whole process is. You're not just, as Conservative Party members, electing a new party leader, you're also going to be choosing the next Prime Minister of this country as well. Now, the candidates are taking it in turns, and who goes first in all of these hustings. So tonight, first up is going to be Boris Johnson. And before we hear from the man himself, his team have put together a short video for you.
Nice to see you. Hello, good morning.
Hello.
Yes, of course you can. If I get in, we'll come out deal or no deal on October the 31st.
Good man.
We'll do that.
Thank you very much.
Would that make you come back and vote Conservative again?
Yes.
That's the spirit.
Yes.
But we've got to have the courage to tell the people of this country that we can do it if we really want to. And that's the only way, actually.
And you're the only person that can do that.
A lot of teachers are telling me that they feel that the funding per pupil isn't high enough. We need more police out there, and sometimes I think we need... And stop and search?
Yes.
Totally with you.
I'm scared. My daughter used to live in the road.
Yeah. Safe big city it was when I used to run it. I can tell you we got crime down by 20%, we got the murder rate down. But I also think we need to be supporting the wealth creators in the business sector, because otherwise you're not going to have the dosh to invest. Right. Cut some taxes and you'll get more money in. Would you normally think of yourself as a Conservative voter, would you say? No? Ever? Can I ask you a terrible question? Would you consider voting for me?
Yes.
If there is one lesson from that referendum of 2016, it is that too many people feel left behind, that they're not able to take part fully in the opportunities and success of our country. That's why now is the time to unite our society and unite our country, to build the infrastructure, to invest in education, to improve our environment and to support our fantastic NHS, to lift everyone in our country, and of course also to make sure that we support our wealth creators and the businesses that make that investment possible. Now's the time for us to believe in ourselves and what we can do. And that's why I am standing to be leader of the Conservative Party.
Please welcome then the first candidate vying to be the next British Prime Minister, Boris Johnson.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming tonight. It's fantastic to be back here in can everybody hear me? Good. It's fantastic to be back here in Bournemouth. I wonder why we ever went away from Bournemouth. It's absolutely fantastic to be here. But of course, there are some people who will say
Hannah, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, some people will say that these are very dark and gloomy times for our party. In a sense, if you look at some of the things that are going on, they're entirely right. We managed to score only 9% in the recent European elections. I've never known our party be down at that level before. We are on something like 17, 18, 19, 20% in the polls, apparently. And we have sprouting like two toadstools, two puffballs, feeding saprophytically on the decay and trust in politics. We have the Liberal Democrats and, of course, the Brexit Party, both taking strength, taking votes from our failure to get a great project done. And yet I say to you that the hour is darkest before dawn. And we can turn this thing round. And we can recover and we can win. And I'll tell you what we need to do. There are 3 things that we need to do. And the first of them is what? It is to get Brexit done, to get Brexit done, to get Brexit over the line by October the 31st and come out of the EU. That is what we're going to do. And I say, anybody who proposes any further delay is simply going to end up eroding trust in politics, eroding people's confidence in our democratic institutions further, and further weakening our great Conservative Party and our mission to lead this country. And it simply won't work. Kick the can again, and we kick the bucket, my friends. That is the sad reality. But we can do so much better, because we can come out on October the 31st. We must come out, and we will. And the way we do, there's a very good way of getting a great deal. You sort out the problems of the Northern Irish backstop outside the current withdrawal agreement. You disaggregate the elements of that now defunct withdrawal agreement, and you do the citizenship bit first. Give the EU, the 3.2 million EU nationals, the protections that we should have given them years ago, don't you think? Why not? I mean, come on, absolutely right. Give them that. Suspend the money in a state of creative ambiguity, the 39 billion over the talks until we get the answer that we want, and then use the period of the after we have come out, after October the 31st, to settle the problems of the Irish border and all the technical fixes that we know we can introduce to address those issues, whilst we negotiate the free trade deal. That is the logical way to do it, and that, by the way, is an approach that increasingly is carrying support across our party, uniting people on all wings of the Conservative Party. And the way to get that deal, of course, is to make sure that we prepare for no deal. Absolutely. And there will be people who say that it's impossible. There will be people who say that the planes won't fly and there won't be clean drinking water and there won't be enough milk solids and glucose to make and whey to make Mars bars. Well, I say nonsense. The planes will fly and there will be drinking water, whatever happens on November the 1st in this country, and there will be milk solids and glucose and whey for our Mars bars. Where there's a will, there's a way, as I repeatedly said. And once we do it, once we've got out, and while we're in the process of negotiating that fantastic free trade deal, then we will be able to get on and do what the people of this country want us to do. And that is bring the United Kingdom together, the whole UK, the awesome foursome. And if there's one sentence that sums up what I want to do as Prime Minister, it is to unite our country in the way that I was able to unite London. And I look back at those 8 years. I began with a kind of tale of two cities. People said that London was deeply divided socially and economically. By the end, we had brought it together. We had 4 of the 6 poorest boroughs anywhere in the UK. By the end, through investment in transport infrastructure, by cutting crime, by building record numbers of homes, we had closed the opportunity gap. We had none of the poorest 20 boroughs anywhere in the UK. And that is what we're going to do with our fantastic country. We're going to invest in infrastructure. We're going to lift up education spending around the country. And we're going to close the ridiculous digital divide that means people across the country do not have access to full fibre broadband in the way that they should. And we're going to make sure that we have a programme of full fibre broadband across the entire UK at least 8 years ahead of the current ludicrously slow timetable. And that will give us the chance. That will give us the chance to campaign for modern conservatism. What I mean by that is the balance, the symmetry between belief in the free market. And we haven't heard enough of it. in the last 3 years. We haven't done enough to talk up our basic, the moral case, the moral case for conservatism, because that's the way to generate the income that will pay for fantastic public services and infrastructure that are themselves essential for business to invest. And that is a very, very easy case to make. And once we make that case again with conviction and clarity and power, we will be able to do the third and most important thing, which is to defeat Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour Party. Because that guy would not only put up taxes on inheritance, but on financial transaction tax. He put up taxes on pensions, on income, on gardens, my friends here in Bournemouth, and all to pay for a ludicrous programme of renationalisation amounting to £300 billion. He would be an economic and political disaster for this country. We cannot allow it to happen. Are we going to allow it to happen? No, we certainly are not. And I just say this in conclusion. I don't think it will happen. Yes, things may look gloomy now, but we have a fantastic opportunity. With superhuman incompetence, the Labour Party actually managed to go backwards in the recent council elections. The people of this country aren't swallowing the semi-Marxist claptrap of Jeremy Corbyn and his London cabal. And I would just remind you in conclusion that the last time I had to fight a representative of that cabal of superannuated Marxists and semi-Marxists, I was able, in 2012, far more fertile and ingenious exponent, by the way, of that ideology than Jeremy Corbyn. My team defeated Ken Livingstone when we were 17 points behind in London. We came from behind to win. We can do it. We will do it. We must do it. And with your help, we will. Thank you very much indeed for listening tonight. Thank you.
So I didn't explain the format before, but basically we're going to have a 10-minute or so discussion now, and then the floor will be over to you. First of all, Boris Johnson,
Hannah.
Why do you want to be Prime Minister?
Because I have an overwhelming sense of responsibility right now to, for the last 3 years, I've been frankly very frustrated to see the direction of our argument about Brexit. I've been depressed in a way to see the way we've tended to run our country down and not believed in ourselves. And one of the things that being Foreign Secretary taught me was that this country is loved and admired and esteemed around the world. And the thing that they've so often said to me, friends in, whether in India or China or the Gulf or wherever, they say, look, you're the United Kingdom, you're Great Britain. If you're going to do this thing, then do it. Believe in it. And I feel that incredibly strongly. I want to have a chance to take us in what I think is overwhelmingly the right direction and get Brexit done on October 31st, then deliver a compassionate, modern, conservative agenda.
Lifelong ambition or sense of public duty?
Well, this is my sister Rachel notoriously said that I wanted to be world king, which is not a quotation I recognise, by the way. But I had all sorts of ambitions in my life. I wanted to be a rock star at one stage, and that didn't go at all well. But right now, I think I've got to try to do this. I've really got to try to do this because I can see very clearly what needs to be done, and I have a good plan and a great team. And I'm very proud, by the way, of the range I mentioned earlier. We've got large numbers of MPs backing me. I don't think anybody expected a year ago that we'd have more than half the parliamentary party behind me, but that's where we are now.
Let's talk policy then. On immigration, that seems to be what you've been discussing today, and the Australian points-based system. We don't have it in this country. Explain exactly how that would work.
Well, what it means, obviously it's up to the Migration Advisory Committee to look at the Australian experience and try to work out what the best way forward. But what it means for me is that we continue to want to attract talent, and when I was Mayor of London, we benefited massively from motivated people coming to London with whatever skill they might have, which this country often needs. But it should be done in a way that is two things. First of all, it should respond to the needs of the sector concerned, so that actually, you know, people should come when there is a job that they have on offer. They should come when there is a need for someone of their skills to come to this country. And they should come in a way, finally, that is democratically controlled. That's the most important thing. And the problem with the way the EU works is that actually there was no control. And people could just come and still can in treating this territory as though it was part of, which legally speaking it is, part of a gigantic 28-nation territory. And that, I think, did produce all sorts of, it did produce benefits, but it also produced lots of strains and lots of confusion.
Going back to this Australian points-based system, though, every system has its faults. What are the downsides of it?
The downsides might be. I mean, I haven't. We haven't yet put it into practice. We haven't yet seen what the downsides could be. Before we, let's look at the upsides before we start looking at the downsides.
You talked about bringing talent in, for example. What about non-workers wanting to come into this country?
Non-workers.
Students or family members?
Okay, well, I mean, family members have, as everybody knows, already very extensive rights of family reunion, which are very clear under our immigration system, and wherever they come from in the world. As for students, I'm Bournemouth University, one of the great university. I'm proud to have a hoodie from Bournemouth University, which I go jogging in. I want to see students taken out of the cab. I think that a higher education economy is one of the glories of the UK's system.
How would the points-based system apply to students and to family members? How would they be rated on a points-based system?
I don't, they would not, for my money, be included, because what we're looking at is, family members would have a right of reunion that is understood according to, kindred and affinity and all the rest of it, and there are already established procedures for deciding who can come on the basis of family reunion. As for students, I think that international students contribute massively to the UK higher education economy, billions and billions of pounds in fees. I think more than 5 billion a year. And the interesting question, actually, and one that really deserves thinking about, is EU students in future who are currently treated for revenue purposes as UK nationals, we will have to consider, obviously, treating them now as international students and asking them to pay as well, which will bring in more money for our universities.
Okay, I want to move on to Brexit. You told me yesterday that the chance of a no-deal Brexit was 1,000,000 to 1. Do you stand by those odds?
Yes, I do. Well, I mean, I'm not. This is not a bookies, but I do. I think that. Look, there are several things that have changed since March the 29th, Hannah. Most importantly, the UK failed twice to come out with really catastrophic consequences for trust in politics, and all of us MPs can see that. And you're really seeing a change in the mood in Westminster, a realization that unless we get this thing done, unless we act with maturity and dignity and work together to get Brexit over the line, there will be a very severe judgment of history upon us. And not just a judgment of history, but there will be a democratic retribution upon both the Conservative Party and actually the Labour Party as well. And so that's why I think we have growing opportunity to get this thing done with style, come out on October the 31st, and then, as I say, use the next period to negotiate an FTA and get on with all the rest of the things we need to do.
Looking through this negotiating period then, what relationships did you perhaps forge as Foreign Secretary that you can then take forward? Specific examples of relationships you forged that will help you in this negotiating period?
Well, you may not know this, Hannah, but I spent many happy years in Brussels. I know the system extremely well. And admittedly, I was latterly a correspondent for the Daily Telegraph. But I had good relations with my Irish counterpart, Simon Coveney, who will be very important in the discussions. I certainly know most of the key players, have met them and talked to them. And just if you want evidence of the kind of deal that we were able to do with our European friends and partners, I might single out getting a lot of them to expel Russian diplomats in support of the UK following the poisonings in Salisbury. And you know, a lot of other friendly, the French, the Germans, many others came to showed their solidarity with the UK in a way that was really quite extraordinary. If you consider, to kick out a Russian spy means that you are going to incur, your own country is going to incur retribution from Putin. But they did it to show solidarity with us in the UK, and we organised a lot of that.
Are you currently in contact with European negotiators?
I am currently in contact with loads of people around the world who are wishing me well in the present contest.
But not specifically on your deal?
I have not begun talking to my Monsieur Barnier, who I know, or Sabine Veillon, or anybody, though she's moving on, because I think most people in this audience would think that was pretty presumptuous. I'm going to bide my time, but of course, I just think this is an interesting point, though, and it's something underlying your question. We've gone a long way now by going out and asking Brussels for this or that, and then being rebuffed and feeling that we've got nowhere else to go. And I think it's time for a slight change in our approach. I think, if I may say so, I don't want to be. I'm a very irenic kind of guy, and very, very much in favour of dialogue and constant conversation. But in the end, this is a great, great country, and we've made an extremely generous offer of 39 billion in the treatment of the EU nationals, which I say we should get done. There's a very good deal on the table, waiting to be done by our European friends. I just don't know what you think, folks, but I think a little bit more resolve is called for, and a little bit more sense that we can actually get this done.
Well, we've had loads of questions for you, as you'd expect, and it's time to go over to the audience now. And the first up is Stephen Skinner, who has a question.
Stephen Skinner? Not the Stephen Skinner I used to know.
Oh, it might be someone you know. Stephen.
Thank you. Stephen Skinner from North Dorset.
Oh, right. No, OK. Nonetheless, great to hear you.
Having seen all of the hustings and read and heard all of the PR, it's possible that I will decide that one candidate is best for the success of the party and one is best for the prosperity of the country. Which scenario should I vote for and why?
Well, I think that the two individuals are one and the same. And I understand I do, because I genuinely, seriously, Stephen, I think the problem that we've had, and the reason for so much business hesitation and the reason for so much confusion and indecision is that they are reflecting and responding to political indecision and our unwillingness over the last 3 years to decide some fundamental questions about what we're going to do to make sense of Brexit, particularly how to come out of the customs union and how to achieve regulatory divergence, actually to take advantage of the freedoms that Brexit will give us. And I think that will not only, once they have some clarity, once the business community has some clarity, I think that will trigger a great sense of confidence and certainty about the way to proceed. Because, believe me, there's no problem that British business can't in the end solve and address, and there are plenty of opportunities that Brexit will provide, and we will certainly as a government be willing to help. I also think that paradoxically, that clarity will be warmly welcomed across the Channel, where for 3 years they've been rather baffled by what we really want. And when they have a clear answer about what we really want, I think the mood will lighten and we'll be able to take things forward.
Just following up on that then, if it was the choice between party or country,
yeah, sorry.
if it was the choice, but you can just ignore that. If it was the choice between party or country, the unity of which one should come first?
Again, I think the two, it's a false choice, because I think the two things go hand in hand.
But would the breakup of the union be an acceptable, albeit undesirable?
Right, that's a very good question, Hannah. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about this. Actually, I think that a really good Brexit will help to cement the union, because there are all sorts of ways in which post-Brexit we'll be able to intensify the union. I would also point out that the Scottish Nationalist Party will effectively have their guns spiked, because once we make a great success of Brexit, they will have to argue to the people of Scotland that they want to rejoin the EU, join the euro, join the Schengen area, submit Scotland to every type of EU regulation, and lose control, which they will have just gained, lose control of Scottish.
Yeah, he did, yeah. He did? Yeah. He could go back into the DA's office.
Okay.
You know, and sit there for a while.
I mean, it's fun. Yeah. It's one thing he's picked up. Yeah. Donovan?
Yeah, I got it. Huh? No, and there's like a big, I don't know what it is, but there's like construction.
You want to take the back or no? No, I don't think it's okay.
He just went to the court.
Yeah, we're back up. Okay. This isn't his car, this is Vance's car.
I'm sorry, I put it on airplane mode because it's big. I think it, yeah. Okay. Okay. I just think they would care more. There would be someone out here keeping a package.
Nothing to say. It's just not to say. Nothing to say.
Why'd you do it?
How you doing?
Okay. And then we're just all getting each other excited.
got intel.
Go get him.
There's three of us.
Yeah, I know.
I already told this to I'm serious. You already got really two super sharp, really great photos. I think nobody else sees that. Yeah, on my face. You really put somebody up closer.
They might be let down, just so you know, it's 3X.
Seriously, how about putting the picture? I sent two pictures. I sent two pictures. I sent two pictures. If you don't have two pictures, then go check your email, okay? Or ask your man.
Frank?
Did he tell you that there was a second picture? Because I'm not running the desk. I'm just a measly photographer.
Frank?
Okay? So why don't you put that fucking picture? Why don't you put that fucking picture up on the web already and stop complaining about a piece of shit that you did before? So let's get hopping. Get that picture
Can you
up.
get
Come
Frank's
on, what are you
attention
waiting
for
for? I already refreshed. I refreshed my thing twice. I haven't seen my picture up yet. Let's go. Chop chop.
Hey, do you want this spot and I'll take this to the back door?
I'm going
up
back
to you.
refresh
Why don't you
the
go
web.
here? Because they'll probably come right in here.
Okay.
And I'll do the back door in case they bring them out that way.
I do very much.
guacamole in there. Thinking like the cops all went down there.
Yeah, the cops all went down there.
What are y'all here for?
Like that.
I could. He's gone. He went out the garage. Yeah. All right. I'm gonna like this. Which makes total sense. Lucas. Get him? Sorry. Oh, okay. I knew. Yeah, unfortunately, he's gone. Going through work now. I don't think so. Paul Manafort? Oh,
I want you to put both of them in.
Going to quit?
Listen to both. Take this one out.
For the hours that I wasn't paid to get here early.
we will take steps to increase education funding and to reflect the needs of schools around the country. You know, at the moment, yeah. Look, of course, London has particular expenses. We all understand the extra costs on teachers and schools in London, but at the moment, the per capita per kid payment is about £6,800, or up at that level in some places. In parts of rural Britain, it's down at 4,200, or perhaps even lower. You know, these are big discrepancies. It makes a big difference to schools, to teachers, to the lives and hopes of the kids. So come on, we've got to level up, and that is, you know, that is the core message about what I want to accomplish if I'm lucky enough to be elected. It's about leveling up this country. Brexit was partly about democracy. It was partly about immigration, but it was also, you know, very largely about democracy and substantially about immigration. But it was also about a sense in too many places around the UK that they were left behind, and that they were unloved, that they weren't sufficiently invested in, and not part of the gigantic success of London and the South East, which are the most productive regions in the whole of Europe. You know, these are knockout success in that area, but, you know, literally 500 towns around the UK that could be doing so much better. And we've got to lift up the whole country. There are ways of doing it with infrastructure, with education, with technology like broadband. We should get on and do it, and that's what I want to do.
Can you make a commitment on education funding?
Yes, I think I already have.
Can you make it again?
I want to raise education funding. It will cost billions, but it has got to be done.
A specific sum?
Well, it'll be around 5 billion is what I think we'll need to spend, but it has to be done.
Okay, around 5 billion. Chris Russell has a question.
Good evening. Chris Russell, Winchester, Conservative Association. I've been musing recently about what we'd call a collective noun for Conservative Party members, and I came to the conclusion it would be a division. We have a very fractured party. How will you heal that fracture?
I agree with you. The sad thing is that what you say is true, but I think that the reason we feel divided is because there has been such a lack of decision and such a lack of clarity. And, you know, we all know the psychology, what it's like when people feel that they don't, there's an argument about which way to go. Of course, there's no clarity, and people wrangle, and that has actually paradoxically got worse since the referendum, not better. And what we need now is a clear charting of the way ahead, and above all, to come out of the EU on October the 31st. And if you do that, shall I tell you, what will happen, of course, is that both these puffball parties that I've described, and I don't wish to be disrespectful to them or to anybody who supports them. Well, what I mean is that they've sprouted saprophytically on the decay of trust, so that they've arisen because people feel that they can't trust us or Labour to get Brexit done. And
trust you?
They certainly can. They certainly can. I think it's absolutely crucial. And to get back to your point, if we get it done in the way I want, and we will get it done, then what will actually happen is that far from people feeling more divided, the object of controversy will be removed. And we, as a party, will be able to get on with the things that basically unite us. And the great project on which we are united is, I think, taking this country forward with that very, very simple vision of modern conservatism, which we trust in the market, trust in enterprise, support business, but because we know that that's the way to pay for fantastic public services and so many other wonderful civilized things. And that is a very, very easy message to sell. But we haven't been selling it for the last 3 years. So let's get back to that basic conservative tune. It's a great song.
And with that, your time is up. Boris Johnson,
Already?
thank you very much indeed. Yes.
Is that an hour?
Yeah, overall, yeah.
Was it an hour? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Boris
Thank
Johnson. Now, of course, it's time to hear from the other candidate running to be the leader of this party and of the country as well. Before Jeremy Hunt comes out to speak to you, we're going to hear from his campaign team as well, a video.
The most striking quality about Jeremy Hunt was his unwavering commitment to get results. I think perhaps part of that is to do with his background in business. No matter what the obstacles were, he was prepared to push through them. He wanted to get results.
I've seen him deliver on the things that matter most to the British people. He has credibility from all sides. I trust him on Brexit.
I've known Jeremy for 40 years, and about 25 of those years we've worked together, setting up various businesses. Those early days were absolutely about his determination and grit. He would never give up.
When I first met Jeremy, I realised he was a man who actually was committed to making a difference.
In 2008, I lost my baby son Joshua as a consequence of serious failures in his care during my campaign to kind of uncover the truth about what happened. I was struggling to be heard. Jeremy really listened and treated me as a grieving dad rather than a troublemaker. I knew that this was somebody who was going to change things.
My mum died quite tragically from poor care in mid-South. Jeremy was incredibly kind. He saw the bereaved daughter behind the campaigner and he saw it was people that mattered.
I have known Jeremy Hunt since the early 2000s. He and his business partner started funding the education of children living with HIV in our community-based programme. Jeremy's generosity was sensed by us all.
That desire to make a difference really drives him. It's never been about him. It's always been about what he can do to help others.
The work he's done will save the lives of countless babies and other families will not have to go through the kind of pain that we did.
People often underestimate Jeremy because he comes across as being such a polite and generous and nice person, and he is. But I remember hearing him warning the EU not to mistake British politeness for British weakness, and I thought that just about sums him up.
I was pessimistic about the London Olympics. I thought, we could mess this up. I remember talking to Jeremy in the build-up. He said, no, we're a great country. We can do this if we have the right mindset. The delivery was outstanding, but also had this element of fun. I know that Jeremy was very involved in getting that balance right.
He believes in Britain as a force for good in the world. He's shown strong values at the FCO and consistently good judgment.
Negotiating, toughing it out when things get really difficult, keeping going, having a vision. Those are the skills that we need in a Prime Minister.
He's a unifier. He's somebody who can reach out to different groups of people.
My dad always taught me that politics should be about making a difference in ordinary people's lives. And Jeremy made a huge difference to our lives. He gave us hope, and that for me was the main thing, that he gave us hope in some very, very dark days.
Please show your appreciation for the other man who is vying to be the next Prime Minister of this country, the current Foreign Secretary. Oh, I've got some volume. Good job, I've got a booming voice. Jeremy Hunt, welcome him.
Friends, good evening. This has been an amazing campaign. I've had fish and chips in Aberdeen, a Balti in Birmingham, an ice cream on the front here, the worst photo op you could imagine, 2 free haircuts, I've still got some hair, and there's something familiar about here. Haven't we been here before? Isn't it time we brought our party conference back to Bournemouth? Now, the nice thing about being the underdog is that for the first time in my life, the internet is actually being quite kind to me. And they kindly ran a competition for what my campaign slogan should be. So I had hashtag take a punt on Hunt. I had hashtag Jezzers the Bezzer. And I had hashtag Hunty McHuntface. Now, be very careful how you say that at home, because we are the party of the family. But, friends, we are in a very serious situation. If we get this wrong, we risk no Conservative government, no Brexit, no Conservative party even. But if we get it right, we can deliver Brexit, unleash the potential of our extraordinary country, and send Corbyn packing. Now, we've had a lot of discussion in these Brexit debates about how, but not enough discussion about who. Who is the Prime Minister we trust to go to Brussels and sort this out? And if you choose me, I'll be the first Prime Minister who has a background as an entrepreneur. Now, who here has set up their own business? Just put up your hand if you've set up. That is the Conservative Party, the party of business. And what do? Entrepreneurs, we negotiate. That is what you do every single day with your customers, with your suppliers, with your employees. And what's the first rule of negotiation? You have to be prepared to walk away. And what's the second rule? You've got to figure out what the other people are going to do. And this is where we have a challenge, because there are some people in Parliament, and I totally deplore this, but there are some people in Parliament who have voted and will vote to take no deal off the table. And we have got to recognise we can't wish that reality away. The quickest way to get out of the European Union is to negotiate a deal that can get through Parliament, and that is what this entrepreneur, this negotiator is going to do for our party and for our country, because we are one of the oldest democracies in the world, and in this country we do what the people tell us, and we're going to deliver Brexit. And when we do, what incredible excitement awaits. As someone who's set up their own business, I am just champing at the bit to turn us into the fastest growing, most high-tech, greenest, most dynamic pro-enterprise economy in Europe. You know, we've got the top universities in Europe, some of the top ones in the world. We've got more tech entrepreneurs. We could be the world's next Silicon Valley. Here, in this part of the world, you've got the fibre optic program in Bournemouth, superfast Dorset, huge growth in tech jobs. You know what this is all about, and I'm going to take a giant step towards that by cutting corporation tax to 12.5% Irish levels. And we are going to put an economic jumbo jet on Europe's doorstep, so that when it comes to those trade negotiations, they need us every bit as much as we need them. And I'm also the Foreign Secretary who wants Britain to walk tall in the world. And my dad was in the Navy. We followed him all around the country, from Devon to Portsmouth to Surrey to Scotland. And thanks to his generation and their service, we won the Cold War. They never took peace for granted, and nor will I. And that's why I've said I'll increase defence spending to beyond 2% of GDP, not just to deal with aggression from countries like Russia, but also because at the point of Brexit, I want the world to know that Britain, one of the few countries that stands up for democratic values and the security needed to underpin it. Britain is here, Britain is back, and Britain's voice is going to be strong in the world. I'll be the first Prime Minister who's been responsible for our NHS. And I always think that we should have a social mission, not just an economic mission. And I was proud to be responsible for some fantastic hospitals in this area, Southampton, Bournemouth, Poole, many great hospitals. But I want our next social mission to be the social care system. In this part of the world, the proportion of over 80s is 50% higher than the national average. Of course, that's no one in the audience tonight. None of you look a day over 40, except for Steve Bryan, who's working too hard in Winchester. But social care is important because as Conservatives, we want every single older person in our country to be treated with dignity and respect. And we also care about younger people. And I want us to be the Conservative government that abolishes illiteracy and makes sure that every young person leaves school with the rigorous qualifications so they can get a decently paid job. And finally, politics is about winning elections. And if you choose me, I'll be the first Prime Minister in half a century who's won a marginal seat. I know what it's like to knock on every single door, need every single vote. I'm looking at every single vote right now. And, you know, it's hard work. But I make you two promises. Number one, by the time we go into a general election, if I'm Prime Minister, we will get more young people voting Conservative, because we can't be the party of aspiration unless the most aspirational people are voting for us. And my second and final promise is this: I will not provoke a general election until we've left the European Union. We can't ask for another mandate from the British people until we've delivered the mandate that we were given last time. Forget that. Ignore that. And we ignore the lessons of Peterborough, where Labour crept through the middle. We ignore the crocodile lurking under the water of British politics. A Labour Party led by the most ruthless, dangerous, anti-Western, anti-British, hard-left cabal ever in its history under Jeremy Corbyn. The biggest danger to our country. We won't let them take over. And I'm telling you this right now, faced with that hard-left populist, Jeremy Corbyn. Sure, we could choose our own populist, but we can do better. We can choose our own Jeremy. A Jeremy who's going to win the argument for enterprise, aspiration, for true social justice. Not so much for those of us here this evening. Most of us have done okay, but social justice for the young people, desperate for a decently paid job, for families desperately saving up to buy a home, for older people so keen just to live out their time in dignity. Those are the people the Conservative Party is for. Those are the people we must fight for. We've got to deliver Brexit, unleash the incredible potential of our amazing country. Let me show you how. Thank you very much.
Take a sip of water first. Why do you want to be Prime Minister?
Because I want to change our country. I think we have, and I was always brought up to believe that we have the most incredible country anywhere. I think you win the lottery ticket of life if you're born a British citizen, because we are a country that is incredibly successful. We fight for our values, but we're also a compassionate country as well. But I look at our country today, and I think there's so much more that we can do, so much more with our economy, so much more to give ourselves the best healthcare and education systems in the world, and so much more as a Conservative Party that we can do to bring our country together after such a difficult and divisive period. And that's what I want to do.
Are you concerned about threats that it could be the shortest tenure in history?
Well, if we get this wrong, it will be. And we have got the biggest constitutional crisis in living memory. And that is because MPs like me made a promise to the people that we would deliver the outcome of the referendum, whatever it was, and we failed. And that has shaken people's confidence in our democracy. So it is a very challenging period. And we need a Prime Minister who's going to pick his way through that, get us to the other side, deliver the Brexit that people voted for, and bring the country together.
If you fail on Brexit, though, to deliver the Brexit that you say that you want, or that no deal is perhaps far more disastrous to this country than you've previously predicted, would you fall on your sword and resign?
Of course. I mean, no Prime Minister is going to last any time at all if they don't deliver Brexit and deliver it very quickly. That is the reality of British politics. That's not about Jeremy Hunt, that's about anyone who does that job. But, you know, no deal is for me a last choice, but it's one I would always keep on the table. And if we get to October and there is no prospect of a deal that we can get through Parliament, and no deal is on the table, as I sincerely hope it would be, then I'm absolutely clear I will leave, because that is what we promised, and it won't be easy and it will be bumpy. But we've been through worse, and we would make a success of it. But we have to fulfill that solemn promise to the British people, because when I go around the world as Foreign Secretary, I meet so many countries, they have this respect for Britain, actually a whole lot more respect for us than we sometimes have for ourselves. And what they respect is that we are a democracy. You know, extraordinary things like changing our Prime Minister in 1944, which seems so strange when you look back on it that we would do that. But that told the world that this was a democracy, and that's an incredibly precious thing, and that's why we have to deliver Brexit and deliver it soon.
Your deal for Brexit, what's in it?
Well, I don't think there's a big difference, actually, between me and Boris in that respect. I think we both want to change the deal that we have on the table, to remove the backstop so that it can't trap us in the customs union forever. I think we both want a technology solution. My approach as a negotiator to getting there is to learn the lessons of what went wrong last time. Last time the EU stopped negotiating with us because, very sadly, they didn't believe that the British government could deliver Parliament. They said, what's the point of making any more concessions, because we don't think you'll get it through Parliament. So I'll put on my negotiating team the DUP, the ERG, who are the Brexit purists in our party, Scottish Conservatives, Welsh Conservatives, to show the EU that any deal that we propose is one that we can get through Parliament. And I think that's the first very important step.
You've said in the past that the political consequences of no Brexit would far outweigh the economic consequences of no deal. What about the political consequences of no deal if it started to threaten the United Kingdom and the Union?
Well, I think there is a risk if we had to deal with a no-deal situation. I think Nicola Sturgeon would make absolute hay with that. She wants to persuade people in Scotland that it's badly governed from Westminster, so she would use that. So we would have to do everything we could to make sure she didn't exploit that. And let's be clear, as Prime Minister, I will never, ever allow our precious union to be broken up. So that is going to be a challenge, but I don't think it's insurmountable. And in the end, more than 1 million people in Scotland voted to leave the European Union, and we have to be true to their wishes as well. And I think we can make no deal work, but I would do it with a heavy heart because of the risks, as you say, both to the union and to businesses.
On foreign policy, you're Foreign Secretary right now. What relationships have you forged as in your current role that you think set you in good stead when it comes to Brexit negotiations? So specific relationships with EU counterparts.
Well, I think I have good relationships with all my EU counterparts, but they're very direct relationships. You know, I tell them how it is. I told them 6 months ago, lots of them, that I thought that they were driving a bargain with the UK that was going to be too hard to get through Parliament. And I said, I think you've got to be very, very careful going down this route, because you could end up with a situation that's very bad for the EU as well as bad for the UK. So I don't think it helps to be friendly, but a friend tells you things as they are.
Thinking of counterparts outside of Europe then, this morning your Japanese counterparts and the Japanese government urged the UK to avoid a no-deal situation?
Yes, I have this discussion with the Japanese many times, and they understandably don't want no deal because they've got very big investments in this country, particularly in the car industry. But what I say to them is that, you know, in the Second World War, we fought for democracy across the world, including in Japan. And they have to understand that, in the end, that is something that this country will always fight for. And we made a decision to leave the European Union, a democratic decision, and we are going to honour that decision. And so, you know, if anyone thinks that we would cancel Brexit because of a fear of no deal, they totally misunderstand Britain. But that doesn't mean it's our first choice. We understand their concerns, and that's why I think we need to recognise that, you know, the best outcome is to try and negotiate that deal, and that's what I think I can do.
I want to ask you about your spending commitments so far as well. We've talked about cutting corporation tax, increasing the threshold on national insurance contributions, reducing interest rates on student loans as well, defence spending. You're now making a commitment on entrepreneurs, young entrepreneurs.
Yes, indeed. Well, my worry, I'm a supporter of our changes to tuition fees because they've given us some of the best funded and best universities in the world. But I can't, when I knock on doors in my constituency, justify 6% interest rates on tuition fees. It's not fair. And the risk we have with having interest rates that high is that we'll end up discrediting the whole system. So I do think if we want to attract younger people, we have to recognise their legitimate concerns. And I also think I set up my own business in my 20s, and that was a period when we didn't have tuition fees. And I worry, we want our brightest graduates to go out and do what Bill Gates did and Mark Zuckerberg did and set up these amazing technology companies. But some of those people might be put off doing that with debts of 50, 60 grand. So I want to say to them, and this will only apply to a small number of people, I want to say to them, look, if you go out and you set up a successful business and you employ people, then we'll cancel your tuition fees because they've done a great thing for the country. They've created wealth for us. They've created jobs, and we should support them and encourage them to do it.
Boris Johnson said that Boris Johnson said earlier we'd be flooded with entrepreneurs, perhaps students straight out of university employing their mates for a couple of years and then and they forget their debt wiped.
You know, no, my specific proposal is that you have to employ 10 people full-time for 5 years. Now, if we're flooded with people doing that, that's brilliant for our country. We should encourage that. It'd be fantastic.
The Institute for Fiscal Studies today has said that with all of the spending announcements that you've made so far, it would cost in the region of 37 to 68 billion pounds. Where does that money come from?
Well, that's because they have misinterpreted what I've said. So the tax cut that I've committed to is a cut in corporation tax to 12.5%. That is expensive. They think it costs 12 billion, I think it costs 9 billion. But if they're right, the truth is with that tax cut, you get about half that money back fairly quickly because you get more investment, people's profits go up, people employ more people, more salaries are paid, more dividends are paid. So it's actually one of the most efficient tax cuts, but the purpose of that tax cut is to increase our growth rate. At the moment, we're growing at 1.5%. If we could boost that to 3%, which is the growth rate they have in America, that would be an extra £20 billion a year for public services or tax cuts. So our focus in terms of where we spend our money has to be on growing our economy so that we can do all the things we want to do later.
Final question from me then. We spoke yesterday about your time as Health Secretary, and then you said that when it came to the junior doctors' row, that the policy you had was right, but you communicated it badly. Have you learnt enough, and do you think it's enough to convince junior doctors now to support you?
Well, I'll never forget my first month as Health Secretary, and I had to deal with the crisis in mid-staffs. And the Department of Health advised me not to meet the families from mid-staffs. But I ignored that advice, and I met a woman whose mother died a really horrible death. Effectively, she was starved to death. She looked me in the eye, and she said, "Jeremy, you could be the one that changes this." And I never forgot that. And by the end of my time, I had a few more grey hairs, but 6 years on, we had 2.7 million more patients using good or outstanding hospitals every year. And I was proud of that. And I did have some battles, and of course, with the benefit of hindsight, I could have communicated my vision better. And I think junior doctors are fantastic people. They are the future of the NHS. And I support them, and I was sad that we had that battle. But do I regret that focus on patient safety, that focus on raising standards? No, because that's what Conservatives believe in. We say, yes, the money matters, but it's not just about the money. It's about the standards we deliver. And that's something only Conservatives understand.
It is time for your questions now. So to kick things off, Christine Bourne has a question. Christine.
Wimborne Minster in Dorset. What are the 3 most important pieces of legislation that you, as Prime Minister, will bring forward in the first Queen's speech of the new session of Parliament?
Thank you. Very important question. And so let me tell you what they'll be. First of all, there would be a no-deal bill to make sure that we have all the planning in place, all the preparations in place, so we can fully prepare this country for a no-deal Brexit, if that's what we have to do. And I'm talking about much, much bigger things than we've been able to do in the past. One of the things, if you have customs checks between countries, is that instead of roll-on, roll-off lorries going between us and the EU, you have to move to containers. So we're going to have a big expansion of our container capacity in ports like Dover. Things like that we need to spend money on quickly in order to strengthen our hand in the negotiations. Second bill would be a budget, because I want those business tax cuts to happen right away, because the best preparation we can have for a no-deal Brexit is to fire up our economy and to put money in the pockets of businesses so they can be strong and resilient with all the changes that lie ahead. And then what's the third thing I'd really like to do? Well, I said that I would like to be the Conservative government that abolishes illiteracy. And nearly a quarter of our children leave primary school not able to read and write to the appropriate levels. And I would like to pass the legislation that's necessary to require schools, wherever they are, to make sure that every single young person leaves properly able to read or write.
Are you, excuse me, are you prepared to make a spending commitment on education as well within that legislation?
Yes, but I would do it in the way I did for the NHS, because changing deep-rooted problems like illiteracy doesn't happen overnight. It's not, by the way, about the hard work or commitment of teachers. It's about being very rigorous, particularly in the schools that don't get good Ofsted ratings. But what I would do is I would say, look, I'm prepared to put money on the table, but you need to show me the reforms that you're prepared to do to make sure that every single young person leaves education with those rigorous qualifications that's going to set them up for life.
Any specific number? You put 15 billion on defence. What about on education?
Well, on education, I think I want to talk to them. By the way, we didn't answer your earlier question about what my fiscal rule will be. All my commitments are funded through a pledge that I will keep reducing debt as a proportion of GDP over the economic cycle. So we won't be building up debt for future generations. We actually have now about £26 billion of headroom a year, which is why we can afford some of these commitments. The commitment I will make on education is that if, and that can be afforded within these numbers, that I will restore per pupil funding to 2015 levels if I can get that commitment to reform.
The next question is from Tony Devonish. Tony.
Good evening, Jeremy. Getting on with the domestic agenda is key too. Will you implement a policy with the residents of Margaret Thatcher's council house sales to win back the domestic agenda? And here's one example: abolish stamp duty for homes under £1 million.
Thanks, Tony. Very important question. And this is actually a matter of trust for young people, because they look at our generation and they say, you bought a house maybe in your 20s or 30s, it's appreciated in value a lot, which is great for you, but it is much, much harder for us now to get our foot on the housing ladder. Margaret Thatcher got 1.5 million council tenants onto the housing ladder through her Right to Buy scheme. I have an equally ambitious scheme called Right to Own, which will help 1.5 million young people get on the housing ladder, people who can't afford a mortgage or a deposit. And the way we'll do that is by gifting people land that already has planning permission, so that the increase in the value of the land isn't something that goes to developers, but it actually goes to the young person who can't afford to get onto the housing ladder. We'll be publishing details of those plans in the next few days, but that is a central part of my mission, to get more young people to support our party, because that is so important for our future.
Tony had a specific question about stamp duty on properties under £1 million.
Well, I would love to do reductions in stamp duty, but Tony, this scheme is also going to cost money, and I want to focus on getting 1.5 million younger people onto the housing ladder, and I think this scheme can do that.
Okay. The next question comes from Lorna McCulloch.
Hello, I'm Lorna McCulloch from Oxford. What are your plans to alleviate the financial burden on students going to university but do not wish to come out with at least £50,000 of debt? The interest charged at 3% above RPI bears no relationship to the cost of borrowing incurred by the government.
Well, Lorna, we've talked a little bit about this before, but what is crazy about our system at the moment is that only half student debt actually gets repaid. And the reason why the interest rate is so high at 6% is because the Treasury is saying they want the whole scheme to be self-funding. So they ramp up the interest rate for the people who can pay back their tuition fees. But of course, that means more and more people end up not being able to pay back their tuition fees. And what feels so unfair to students is that that 6% interest rate is actually ramping up while they're at university, even when they're not working. And it just feels unfair. And I think we have made good reforms. In my generation, we didn't have tuition fees, but only 11% of school leavers went to university. Now it's 50%. That is much fairer, but we need to have a fair system. And so before Hannah asked me how much this is going to cost, to reduce tuition fees, interest rates to around the level of inflation would cost about £1.3 billion a year. That is a lot of money, but I tell you, if we don't do something like that, Jeremy Corbyn's going to come along at the next election and promise to scrap the lot of it, and we're going to lose every single young person to him, and maybe the election as well.
Christine Page has a question. Christine.
Good evening, Mr. Hunt. In view of the complete necessity of completing Brexit by the 31st of October, as a member, I would be baffled that you would not harness the support of all politicians, including Nigel Farage. Would you include Mr. Farage in negotiations?
No. Christine, the reason for that very direct answer is that Nigel Farage doesn't want a deal. He wants a WTO Brexit straight away, and whilst I would be prepared to do that if there was no other alternative, and I'm absolutely clear about that, I think it would be much better for our businesses and much better for our union if we could get a deal. And I haven't given up on that. I think we should be optimistic and positive. When I talk to European leaders, they know this is difficult, but they don't want a no-deal Brexit. They want to find a way through this. And I think if we take the right approach, we can get that. I don't say it's easy, but it's not impossible. And we Conservatives have done more difficult things in the past, and we can certainly do this.
On this question of Nigel Farage, because Boris Johnson was also asked this yesterday, and he said the same as you. He said no, he wouldn't include him in any negotiations going forward. He has, though, garnered so much enthusiasm through the Brexit Party throughout the country. And how will you, as Prime Minister and as leader of the Conservative Party, then counter that threat from the Brexit Party?
Do you know, there is only one way to deal with the Brexit Party, and that is to Brexit. That's what we've got to do, and then we'll deal with them.
What about using the talents of everyone available, such as the talents of Nigel Farage?
We have got incredible talent in our Conservative Party, and we don't need to deal with people who don't even have any MPs in Parliament. But what I'll say is that as a Conservative Party, if we're going to do this, we have got to learn the values of unity. You know, in the 1980s, we had that great reforming government of Margaret Thatcher, but you had around the cabinet table people like Geoffrey Howe and Norman Tebbit, totally different people around the same cabinet table. In the 1990s, you had John Redwood and Ken Clarke around the same cabinet table. And that's the genius of our party. We have the radical reformers who remind us that we have to be bold if we're going to be a great country, and the One Nation Conservatives who remind us that we have to be compassionate and reach out to the centre ground. And we need both those traditions in our party, and if we come together, we can deliver Brexit, and that's what we have to do in the next few months.
Does that reflect on the makeup of your cabinet as well, in terms of the balance between possible Remain votes in the past and Remainers and Leavers?
Do you know, Hannah, I think it's so dangerous to label people as Remainers, Brexiteers, Brexiteers, Remainers. You know, we are all Democrats. I voted Remain, but like millions of Remainers around the country, I want to get on and deliver Brexit, and that's the way we're going to deliver it. If we come together in this big democratic mission, that's what I want us to do.
We have the next question from Dave. So you weren't, your name wasn't on the list, but you've yelled your question, so if you're prepared to answer it.
I profoundly disagree with my cabinet colleagues with my colleagues in the Conservative Party, actually, who have voted to rule out no deal. In my cabinet, we will be voting to keep no deal on the table. That will be government policy, cabinet policy, and I would expect all colleagues to follow the line on that, because that will strengthen our hand in the negotiations.
Let's move on. Question from David Siddick. David.
Good evening. David Sidwick, Police and Crime Commissioner candidate for Dorset. Thank you. Will you give more core funding to the police so that the manpower reflects the demand and allows them to address not only serious crime, but the distressing antisocial behaviour, or if you like, quality of life crime, which affects people more on a day-to-day basis?
Well, first of all, very best of luck to you in the PCC elections. And thank you for the question. I was part of the government that came into power, the cabinet that came in May 2010. And we were facing the biggest financial crisis that we'd had in peacetime. And we made some decisions to put the economy back on its feet, what Jeremy Corbyn likes to label austerity. They were very, very difficult cuts in spending. And I think we were right to do that, because the result of that is that the economy has grown, jobs have been created. I was able to secure that big increase in funding for the NHS. But I think it's true also that in one or two areas we can see, with the benefit of hindsight, that some of those cuts went a bit too far. And the two areas that I would single out are the social care system, where I do think that councils are finding it very hard to deliver the standard of care that we as Conservatives would expect, and also police numbers, where there's a delayed impact. So crime continues to fall for a while when you cut police numbers, but after a while it catches up with you. So those are two areas, without making an explicit spending pledge, that I would commit to look at as Prime Minister.
What about stop and search, expanding stop and search, which Boris Johnson committed to yesterday?
Yes, I agree with Boris on that. I agree with Sajid Javid on that. Stop and search is a very important power for the police. Of course, it has to be used sensitively, but they do have to have the ability to stop someone that they suspect might be carrying knives, committing a crime within the law, and so I support them being able to do what they need to do.
Okay, the next question comes from Jack, either Jack Bolton or Jack who's from Bolton. Okay.
Winchester, actually. Good evening. I'd like to ask you if you yourself could make the difficult decision that Jeremy Corbyn cannot. Namely, would you use our nuclear deterrent in extreme circumstances?
Well, Jack from Winchester, my dad was in the Navy, and in his last job in the Navy, he actually had responsibility for the nuclear deterrent, and this was something that we thought about very hard in our family. And if you have a deterrent that you say you're never going to use, it's not a deterrent. And that is why it would be completely wrong for any Prime Minister to say that they wouldn't ever use a nuclear deterrent. The lesson from the success of the nuclear deterrent is that you have to be strong to be safe. And that is what we did in the Cold War. And I think we need to recognise now that the world is becoming again increasingly unstable. When you look at what's happening in the Middle East, when you look at what's happening in Russia, when you look at a China that is becoming more autocratic, and it's been Britain's historic role to be one of the very few countries that doesn't just speak out for democratic values, but also understands you've got to have hard power behind that to have credibility. And that at the point of Brexit, in the start of this moment in our exciting new moment in our history, I want us to do that now too.
Tim Howard. Tim Howard has a question.
Good evening. Tim Howard from Dorset. The National Health Service has taken on the status of a national religion and is often said to be beyond sensible management and reform, both by those inside it working for it and by those outside it. Do you agree with this? And do you think that the NHS should continue to try to do everything for everybody, regardless of personal responsibility?
Well, the NHS can't do everything, but it can do a lot, and I would like it to continue to do everything that it does for everyone, regardless of ability to pay, because I was brought up to believe that one of the best things about this country is that if you get sick, you don't have to worry about paying medical bills. And I think that we should be proud that we were, I think, the 6th country in the world to introduce universal healthcare coverage. The Kiwis were actually the very first country to do it. But we were one of the very first. And since then, it's been adopted by nearly every country everywhere in the world. But we also have to recognise that personal responsibility is important. How people look after themselves is important. And we need to encourage people to do that because, as Steve Bryan, the Winchester MP, second time I've mentioned Steve this evening, but he was a brilliant Minister for Public Health for many years, encouraging people to live healthier lifestyles. That personal responsibility is important. But as Conservatives, what I can say is that I look at the NHS and I compare it to other healthcare systems around the world. And we've got our problems, we've got our challenges, but other countries have just as many challenges. And the challenges that we're really facing are because of an aging population. And in countries like America, the challenge is spiralling insurance bills, we're actually one of the most efficient healthcare systems in the world. As Conservatives, though, we understand what you understand. That isn't just about money, it's about reform, it's about standards. And my ambition for the NHS, I would like us in a decade's time to have the best cancer survival rates in Europe, because it still frustrates me that with all the brilliant doctors and nurses that we have in the NHS, we don't get those cancer survival rates that we could. I know we can do that, and that's something I would like to press the NHS to do.
I just want to pick up on the last point of part of Tim's question then was, should the NHS do everything that it possibly can regardless of personal responsibility? What role do you think personal responsibility has with regards to the health service?
Well, I don't think we should start rationing services. I don't think that's what the British people want. But that doesn't mean we can't do an awful lot to encourage people to live responsibly. When I was Health Secretary, we published a huge programme to tackle childhood obesity. And I think we said we're going to halve childhood obesity rates in a decade. We put the programme in place to do that. But actually, to do that, what we realised is we need the help of parents. This is not something that we can do on our own. So there's a big role for personal responsibility. But if you are clear about how you go about this, people want to take care of their own health. They really do. But we have to make sure we're getting those messages out.
OK, let's get on with some more questions then. George Smith has a question. George.
Thank you very much. With the recent shortfalls of rail transportation, as well as the National Rail saying that they want to change operations, how would you improve inter- and intra-city travel to help boost economic mobility?
Well, I'm going to say something that isn't particularly popular with some Conservative members living in some parts of the country, but I will deliver HS2. Now, I saw a thumbs down over there about 8 rows back, and I can completely understand why, if it's going through the middle of your beautiful constituency, you might not want it. But let me tell you why. At the point of Brexit, we've got to show the world confidence, and HS2 is our biggest infrastructure project. I lived in Japan for 2 years. They launched their first high-speed rail between Tokyo and Osaka in 1964, 2 years before I was born. We're going to be doing ours in 2026, which is a little bit late. It'll be better than the Japanese one when we launch it, but nonetheless, it's taken a long time. And if we want to be a modern economy, a powerhouse that creates wealth for all our public services like the NHS that we've just been talking about, then we have to do that. And we also have to show the country that we are committed to spreading wealth throughout the country. Our heartlands are London and the southeast, but we won't win any elections without winning marginals in the Midlands and the north. And projects like HS2 are seen in those areas, are symbols of our commitment to the whole country, and that's why I back it.
Question now from Zach. Angle or angel?
It is Angel. What are your plans for diversifying higher education in order to provide more options for college students who are leaving college but don't necessarily want to progress to university or